Alright, so let's try to look at biology paper 1 for internal 2025. So if you are new to this channel, subscribe for more videos. And for those who want to join my WhatsApp tuition, you can WhatsApp me or you can contact me using this number here. Only those who are serious, those who want tuitions. Don't greet me, just tell me the courses or the subject that you want to register. Alright, so the first question is saying the liver cells in the diagram are shown as they would appear under a microscope. So liver cells, they are animal cells. Now the question is saying how many cell walls are visible. You and I, we know to say that animal cells, they are only found in plants. So liver cell doesn't have cell wall, so the answer is just going to be A, 0. Then the second question is saying the diagram shows 4 specialized cells. Which of the cells undergoes contraction and relaxation? So the one that undergoes contraction and relaxation is the muscle cell, which is D. This one is used in the conduction of electrical impulse. This is the sperm cell that fertilizes an egg. This is the root hair cell that absorbs water and mineral salts. For question 3 is saying the diagram shows 2 plant cells, X and Y. So the distance here. So there is an arrow which is showing the movement of substance here. So it is saying which method of movement will make salt to move from X to Y. So we have active transport, diffusion, mass flow, and osmosis. So the answer is going to be osmosis, because you know to say that osmosis is the movement of water molecules from the region of high concentration to the region of lower concentration. But this question is saying which method of movement will make salts to move from X to Y. So salt is the one which is moving. Sorry for that one. Salt is the one which is moving, not water. So meaning to say it is going to be diffusion, because you know to say that diffusion is the movement of substances from the region of high concentration to the region of lower concentration, down the concentration gradient. Alright, so from there we have question 4, which is saying according to the lock and key hypothesis, which is the lock and which is the key for the enzyme maltose? Let me say maltase. So maltase is an enzyme. So when it comes to enzyme reaction, so if this is an enzyme and this is a substrate, an enzyme is always a lock, then a substrate is always a key. So you have been provided with a lock here. So in this case it can be A or it can be what? It can be D. But you need to look at the substrate, which is the key. Is the substrate is maltase having the substrate glucose? No. So you find that maltase act on maltose to produce 2 molecules of glucose. So when maltose is broken down, you're going to have 2 molecules of glucose. So that is one thing that you need to know. So meaning to say the answer is just going to be D. And then question 5 is saying some of the nutrients in sweet potatoes are listed as follows. We have calcium, dietary fiber, we also have iron and vitamin C. So calcium and vitamin D, or vitamin D, is needed for bone formation, as well as let me say dietary fibers, they are needed to prevent constipation. Then iron is needed in the formation of red blood cells. So meaning to say when you're lacking iron, you're going to suffer from anemia. Then when you lack fibers, you're going to have constipation. When you lack vitamin D, you're going to have bone deformation. Then when you lack vitamin C, this vitamin C comes from citrus fruits. So these, they prevent scurvy, that is bleeding of gums. So when you have vitamin C, meaning to say you're not going to suffer from scurvy. So the question is saying from the list, which nutrient will help to prevent which named a disease in the table? So we have anemia. Anemia is lack of red blood cells. So when you're lacking red blood cells, meaning you're lacking iron. So iron is number 3. So it can be A, it can be B. Then when it comes to leakates, it's a deformation. It's more like the bones are not growing properly. They grow laterally. So we have number 1, which is calcium, or it can be vitamin D. Then scurvy is prevented by eating vitamin C. So meaning to say the answer is just going to be A. Then question C saying nitrate ions are important in plants in the formation of. So nitrate, they have nitrogen. So you need to look at the compound here which has nitrogen. So ATP doesn't have nitrogen, fatty acid doesn't have nitrogen, as well as glucose doesn't have nitrogen, because glucose, it has carbon, oxygen and hydrogen. For fatty acid, does just have carbon, hydrogen as well as oxygen. When you took off ATP, it is adenosine triphosphate. So in this case, we are going to have a phosphate as well as oxygen, then as well as magnesium. Alright, then for amino acid, in amino acids, these amino acids, they are building blocks of protein. So they have alpha carbon, they have ara chain or ara side chain, they also have a carboxyl group, they also have an hydrogen group, they also have an amine group which has so this is a 2. So an amine group is the one which has a nitrogen, so a nitrogen is coming from a nitrate, so meaning to say the answer is just going to be A. And then for question 7 saying the diagram shows part of a transverse section through a leaf. So we have 1 which is the fascicular bundle where xylem and phloem is found. Then we have 3 which is found beneath the upper epidermis, so these are palisade cells. And then for 2, these are spongy mesophyll cells where the gaseous exchange takes place. When carbon dioxide enters, it passes through the spongy mesophyll cell and goes to the palisade cell. Similarly, oxygen is going to pass through the spongy mesophyll cell and comes out of the leaf through the stomata. So in this case, for the 1 is representing the transportation, so it can be C or it can be D. And then for number 2 is representing gaseous exchange. Then number 3 in the palisade cell, that is where the process of photosynthesis takes place, meaning to say the answer is going to be C. Then for question 8, it is saying the diagram shows a lysopas. Which of the labeled parts is the lysoid? So the lysoid is the root of the lysopas, so meaning to say the answer is going to be D. Then A is the connecting stolon. The function of the connecting stolon is to connect different lysopas, or 2 lysopas or 3 lysopas. And then C is the spolangiophore, and then D is the spolengulum or the spokes. So the function of the spolangiophore is to hold the spokes or the spolengulum, and then the function of the spolengulum is to release spokes. The function of the lysoid is to release digestive enzymes as well as anchoring the lysopas on the substrate. Then when it comes to question 9, it's saying which of the following is the correct dental formula of a dog? So the dental formula of a dog, so always you just need to remember this number, 3142. 3142. Once you remember the number on top here, meaning to say it is going to be very easy for you to come up with the dental formula of a dog. So how it is here is like this. Then on the down part, you're going to find that here you're going to have 3. So this is going to represent the incisors. Then for the canine, we have 1 on top and one on the bottom. Then when it comes to the premolars, we have 4 as the numerator, then also have 4 as the denominator. But when it comes to the molars, you find that the molars on top there are 3, then down there are, let me say on top there are 2, then on the down part there are 3. So meaning to say the answer is going to be C. But when they ask you to give them the dental formula of a human being, so you just have to remember this number. For a human being, it is very easy, because once you just remember the numbers on top, they are equal to the numbers at the bottom. So it is 2123. So when you remember this number here, always we start with the incisors, canine, premolar and molars. So in this case, you're going to have 2 here, here you're going to have 1, here you're going to have 2, here you're going to have 3. So we have incisors, canine, premolar and molars. So this is the dental formula of a human being. And then for question 10 is saying that the diagram shows the human digestive system. And then we have the question she's saying, where do absorption and ejection occurs? So ejection is different from ingestion. Ingestion takes place at 1, but ejection takes place at 4, which is the anus. Then when it comes to the absorption, it takes place in the small intestine as well as in the large intestine. So we have 3 and 4. So 3 is representing absorption, then 4 is representing ejection. The answer is going to be C. Then for question 11, it is saying the diagram shows chemical digestion of a nutrient in the human body. So we have this which is being broken to form B and C. So C, we have the product here. So these are called the free fatty acids. Free fatty acids. Free fatty acids. Then this is the glycerol molecule. So you find that this is the lipid. The breakdown of lipids, or a breaking down of a lipid, forms glycerol molecule as well as free fatty acid. And these free fatty acid, there are 3. 1, 2, 3 free fatty acid. 3 free fatty acids. Then the enzyme which is involved in the breakdown of lipids, it is called lipase. So enzyme K is lipase. So we have lipase here. But what about B? B is the glycerol. So we have B as a glycerol. Then C, we have fatty acid. So the answer is just going to be B. And then for question 12 is saying which of the following equation shows the type of respiration that can cause an oxygen debit in muscles during vigorous exercise. So during vigorous exercise, you find that anaerobic respiration is going to occur. Now when it occurs in the muscle, you find that lactic acid and energy is going to be produced. But when it occurs in yeast during fermentation, you are going to find that alcohol, carbon dioxide and energy is going to be produced. So this one is for the yeast, then this one is for the muscles. That is one thing that you need to know. So the answer is just going to be B. If the question is talking about the yeast, meaning to say the answer is going to be C. Question 13. Which microorganism causes cholera, and what is its mode of transmission? So cholera is caused by a bacteria which is called Vibrio cholerae. So Vibrio cholerae. Okay, cholerae. Then when it comes to the mode of transmission, it is through water. It is not through blood. It is through water. So the answer is going to be B. Then question 14 is saying the babies are born. They have some passive immunity. So what conditions are needed for passive immunity to develop? So passive immunity is developed when a baby is sucking milk from the mother. So the milk is going to contain the antibodies which is going to protect the baby. So meaning to say the baby used food nutrient from the mother to produce its own antibodies. Now you find that sometimes it can also pass through the placenta. Now that one is not going to be, so you have active and passive. So the one which is going to be active is the one that the baby is going to produce by itself, but the one which is going to be passive is the one that the baby is going to receive from the mother. So the antibodies, there are some antibodies that crosses the placenta, like we can talk of the Mg, immunoglobulin. So we can say the answer is just going to be A. Then for question 15 is saying the setup in the diagram shows an instrument used to measure the rate of process in plants. So this setup, whenever you see this setup, just think of transpiration. So the question is saying what does the setup measure? So it measures transpiration. Then question 16 is saying the following diagram shows a human heart. Which blood vessel is a vein that carries oxygenated blood? So we have two antagonistic blood vessels. So we have what we call this one here, which is called the pulmonary artery. So this pulmonary artery is the one that carries deoxygenated blood. It is an artery that carries deoxygenated blood. Then we have this one here, which is D. This one is called pulmonary vein. So it is the vein that carries oxygenated blood. It is the only vein that carries oxygenated blood. So it takes the oxygenated blood from the lungs and bring it to the heart. So meaning to say the answer is just going to be D, because this is the pulmonary vein, the only vein that carries oxygenated blood, and this is the pulmonary artery, the only artery that carries deoxygenated blood. Then for question 17 is saying the diagram shows the human circulatory system. At which point is the pressure of the blood circulating through the blood vessel the highest? So you find that this is the aorta. C is the aorta. So the blood is carried at the highest pressure through the aorta. So you find that the left side of the heart is muscular than the right hand side. The right hand side because of the pressure at which the blood is pumped through the aorta. Or you can say this is because this is muscular in order for blood to reach different parts of the organs. So you find that here the answer is just going to be B, because B is representing the what? The aorta. Then we have question 18, which is saying which of the following excreted organs excrete toxins, hormones, as well as drugs? So the answer is just going to be kidney. Alright, so question 19 is saying that the graph shows the body temperature of a person measured over a period of time. So when the temperature increases, here you find that there will be vasodilation. So at 1 and 2, we have vasodilatation, vasodilatation or vasodilation. Then we have 3 and 4. These they are representing vasoconstriction, where the blood vessels are going to constrict. So during vasodilation, the blood vessels are going to appear on the skin. Then during vasoconstriction, the blood vessels, they are not going to appear on the skin in order to prevent the loss of heat. Here there is loss of heat, here there is prevention of loss of heat. So here there is vasoconstriction, right? So in this case, the question is saying what stages represent vasodilation and vasoconstriction. So vasoconstriction is happening at 3 and 4. So it can be 3 or it can be 4. Then vasodilation, it is happening at 1 and 2. So we have 2 here. So the answer is just going to be D. Question 20. The following diagram shows the position of the endocrine glands in the human body. So we have Q, which is called the thyroid gland. So what is the hormone produced by the thyroid? Labeled. Let me say, what is the hormone produced by the gland labeled Q, which is the thyroid? So thyroid secretes thyroid hormones. So this thyroid hormone include thyroxine hormone as well as triiodothyronine. Alright. Then we have question 21, which is saying which of the labeled structures in the diagram is an effector? So an effector is any organ part that responds to stimulus. Then and then a receptor is the one that detects the stimulus. So this is the receptor and this is the effector, the muscle gland. So you can talk of the muscle or the glands that are able to respond to the stimulus. And then here, the diagram, which is question 22, the diagram shows the ear ossicles as arranged from the inner or from the eardrum to the oval window. So we have the eardrum, so we have 1, 2, 3. So number 3 is called the stapes, then number 2 is called the incus, then number 1 is called the malleus. So malleus, so we have malleus as 1, 2 as incus, and 3 as stapes. So we have malleus, we have incus, then stapes number 3. So the answer is just going to be B. Then for question 22, it's saying which of the following organisms has an exoskeleton? So an exoskeleton is a skeleton which is found outside the living organism, and that one can be the grasshopper. For the fish, it is endoskeleton. For the human being, is endoskeleton. For the worm, is hydroskeleton. Then question 24. The following diagram shows a response to stimuli by ants. So there is light and darkness. So these ants are running away from the light and they are going to the darkness. So what term best describes this term of response? So they are moving away, according to the arrow here, they are moving away from the light going to the darkness. So when they are moving away from the stimulus, we say negative. Now since this is light, it is going to be photo. Photo is light, so it is going to be negative phototoxic. So the answer is going to be A. Then for question 25, is saying the diagram shows the longitudinal section through a shoot apex. Which labeled part shows the region of cell differentiation? Let me say cell division. So one thing that you need to know here is that the part on top shows cell differentiation, not cell differentiation but cell division, sorry for that, cell division. And then two parts, A and B, these they show cell elongation or zone of cell elongation. Then at D, this is where now you're going to find the cell differentiation or cell specialization if you want. So this is what you need to know. So now there are some things that you need also to know. Let's say for example, if this one was the root, you just have to flip these, meaning to say cell division is going to be at the bottom, followed by cell elongation, and cell division is going to be on top. Since the root is going to look something like this, then you're going to have these as the root air cells. So that is one thing that you need to know. So the answer is just going to be A. Then question 26 is saying the following setup is an experiment to show that oxygen is necessary for germination. So oxygen is necessary for germination. So we have X where the seed is soaked or soaked seeds, then we have water. Then at Y we have soaked cotton with small seeds. Then we have alkaline pyrogel or pyrogel. Then what is the purpose of alkaline pyrogel in Y? So as you can see here, there is a stopper here which is preventing the entering of oxygen. So to show that oxygen is necessary, meaning to say this alkaline pyrogel has to release or to supply oxygen. So meaning to say alkaline pyrogel is supplying oxygen gas. And then for question 27 is saying which of the following is the reproductive structure of Irish potato? So we have sweet potato and Irish potato. For sweet potatoes, they are runners. Then for Irish potato, we have tubers. That is one thing that you need to know. Then question 28 is saying the diagram shows part of a female of, let me say, a part of a flower, which the body part confirms the flower as insect pollinated. So you find that insects, they are attracted by, they follow nectar, isn't it? And nectar is found at the stigma here. So when they come to get the nectar, they pollinate the what? The flower. So meaning to say the answer is going to be what? It's going to be B. Right. So sometimes you can think of C, but C is form of attraction. Just at this flower here is just attracting the leaves. But the purpose of the insect going there, it is to get the nectar at B, which is the stigma. Then question 29 is saying, in which of the following part does fertilization take place in a flower? So it will take place in the ovary. That is one thing that you need to know. Then question 30 is saying the diagram shows a timeline of a woman's menstrual cycle which lasts for 28 days. So menstrual cycle is divided into three. We have menstruation, we also have proliferative phase, we also have circulatory phase. So for menstrual cycle or menstruation takes place from day 1 to day 7 or from day 1 to day 5, between day 1 to day 7. Then between day 12 to day 16, that is where you're going to find ovulation. That is where you're going to find the proliferative phase. Then ovulation is going to take place at day 14. Then from day 17 up to day somewhere 27 to 28, that is where you're going to find the circulatory phase. Alright, so the question is saying on which days of the menstrual cycle is the woman most likely to ovulate? So the woman is most likely to ovulate at day 14. So day 14 is in between 13 and 16. So the answer is going to be C. Then question 31 is saying the diagram shows a developing fetus in the uterus. Then X is representing what? What is the name of the liquid X? Liquid X is called amniotic fluid. So the function of amniotic fluid is to prevent the baby from mechanical damage or mechanical shock. Then we have 32, which is saying the diagram shows a cell during mitosis. So mitosis is divided into, we have the interphase, of course, the interphase where the cell is going to prepare itself by gathering nutrients and other factors which are necessary for cell division. So we have what we call plomeanate. This is the prophase, metaphase, as well as anaphase and telophase. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4 phases. So during prophase, you find that the centrioles are going to appear on the opposite poles of the cell. And then during metaphase, you find that these there will be appearance, under prophase there will be appearance of the spined fibers, or we can just say during metaphase you find that the chromosomes are going to appear aligning on the equator like this. Then during anaphase you find that these chromosomes, we have what we call sister chromatids. So sister chromatids are these. So let's say for example, if this one and this one they are appearing on the same side, we also have let me just use this one. We also have this one and this one. These two they are appearing on the same side. So we have this, we also have this. So these two they are sister chromatids. So sister chromatids are separated during anaphase from the opposite poles, or to the opposite. They are separated and put to the opposite poles. So these are sister chromatids with these, and they are separated to the opposite poles. So what is happening here is called the anaphase. And then telophase, you find that telophase is going to be now, these ones they are going to be fully developed into a full chromosome. A full chromosome looks like this. Okay, so these they are going to develop into a full chromosome, that is telophase, and other things. And the secondization of the nucleus and other things, the appearance of the nucleus and other things are going to happen here. So meaning to say the answer is going to be A, which is anaphase. Then question 33 is saying which of the following best describe tubal ligation. Tubal ligation is the surgical procedure where the oviduct is going to be cut or tied. So the answer is going to be A. Then 34 is saying blood groups have the following alleles A, B, and O, where A and B are dominant while O is recessive. So how many genotypes and phenotypes are possible? So when we talk of genotypes, we are talking about the internal appearance of a living organism, and when we talk of genotypes, the outcomes that you are able to see. So you can have blood group A can exist as blood group A heterozygous. It can also exist as homozygous dominant. Blood group B can exist as heterozygous dominant and homozygous dominant. But from these, when this one and this one crosses to each other, you find that we can have at least a child who's having blood group O. And when this and this one crosses, you find that at least you're going to have a child who is having blood group AB. So actually, the blood groups that we have here, we have number one, we have blood group A. So this is blood group A. This one and this one is blood group A. This one and this one is blood group B. So we have 1, 2. We also have blood group O. We also have blood group AB. So how many phenotypes do we have here? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 phenotypes. Those one that we are able to see. Then when it comes to the genotypes, how many genotypes do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 genotype and 4. This is the phenotype, and this is genotype. So according to the genotype we have 6, then according to the phenotype we have 4. So meaning to say the answer is just going to be C. Then question 35 is saying the diagram shows an arthropod. So using the following classification key, identify the correct option for each key which identifies the arthropod. So we have number 1, it has wings. Yes, so that is A1, that is 1A. And then when it comes to this one, it has 2 body parts, which is A2. This is correct. But when it comes to this one, it doesn't have wings. No, it has. So this one, no. And then here has 3 body parts. No. So as you can see, these body parts which we're talking about are these. We have the abdomen and the thorax. Those are the body parts. And then 3 has 3 pairs of legs. Yes, it has 3 pairs of legs. So we have 1, 2, 3. So this is 1 pair. Okay. And then has 4 pairs of legs. No. So what do we have? We have 1A. So 1A, it can be this one or this one. Then 2A is going to be this one, and then 3A is going to be this one. So the answer is just going to be B. Then question 36 is saying which of the following is not a factor that makes soil to be fertile, or makes the soil fertile? So we have lynching. Lynching is more like the addition of nitrate to the soil through the dissolving of nitrate in water. Then microorganisms like worms, these they add fertile to the soil. Then moisture, it can also add fertile to the soil, but air is not going to add fertile to the soil. Then question 37 is saying, which of the following is an abiotic component of the environment? Abiotic are non-living organisms. Then we talk of biotic are living organisms. So water is a abiotic factor or component. And then we have question 38, which is saying, the diagram shows a food web. Which of the organisms shown in the food web can survive by taking only one simple inorganic material? So the answer is going to be fungus, because fungus it can live by its own, but it only needs a small amount of inorganic material for it to survive, rather than the beetle, the mice, the squirrel, the owl, and then the oo. Then the trees are the producers in the ecosystem. So meaning to say the answer is just going to be fungus. And then for question 39 is saying, the following graph shows a population growth curve for a species of insect which was introduced in a certain era. Then the question is saying, how long after the introduction does insect population size start to be limited by resources such as food? So here we have the population size of insect per meter squared, and then the time since introduction per day. So as you can see, the curve is just increasing up to this point here where it has started bending like this, isn't it? So meaning to say, you find that at 200 or at the 200 you find that there will be limitation of resources, and the population is going to be limited due to the limited of resources such as food. So we have D, which is representing 200 days. Then the last question is saying, which of the following is not a direct economic reason for maintaining biodiversity? So biodiversity is maintained due to conservation, of course. Plants and animals are used for medicine, of course. For food, no. We don't maintain biodiversity in order for us to eat. And then, of course, yeah, but it's not an economic. We are conserving for future use. So that one is going to be, it's going to lead to tourism, which is also an economic reason. But when it comes to food, source of food, this one here, yeah, of course, it can be, but it is not directly as the source of the direct way of economy. All right. So meaning to say the answer is just going to be D. So thank you very much for watching, and see you next time in the next video.